I want a divorce. As Ethan's words echoed in my mind, I stared at the legal papers in my trembling hands. After 25 years of marriage, he was leaving me for his pregnant mistress. Rage consumed me. He had no idea what I was capable of. My name is Natalie Pierce, and I've been a devoted housewife and mother in suburban Los Angeles for as long as I can remember. At 48, I thought I had it all figured out: a loving husband, 2 grown daughters, and a comfortable life. But in one cruel moment, everything changed. "Ethan, how could you do this to me, to our family?" I demanded, my voice shaking with anger and disbelief. "We've been together for a quarter of a century. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" He couldn't even look me in the eye as he shrugged, his gaze fixed on the floor. "I'm sorry, Natalie, but I've found someone else and she's pregnant. It's time for me to move on." Move on? Just like that? I felt like I'd been sucker punched. The wind knocked out of me. The man I'd loved, the father of my children, was tossing me aside like a used tissue. As if on cue, our eldest daughter, Vanessa, burst into the room, her fiancé Luke trailing behind her. "Mom, we heard everything," she said, rushing to my side and enveloping me in a hug. "Don't worry, we're here for you. We'll move in and help you through this." I clung to her, grateful for the support, but little did I know that my own daughter would soon betray me too. Ethan was already gone, his suitcase in hand, off to start his new life with his mistress. And I was left alone, drowning in a sea of hurt and betrayal. Over the next few weeks, Vanessa and Luke made themselves at home in my house, but not in the way I'd hoped. They were inconsiderate roommates, leaving messes everywhere and expecting me to wait on them hand and foot. I tried to talk to them about contributing to household chores and expenses, but they always had an excuse. "Mom, we're just trying to get on our feet," Vanessa would say, her tone condescending. "You can't expect us to pay rent right now." Meanwhile, Ethan's lawyer was pressuring me to sell the family home as part of the divorce settlement. It was the only thing I had left, the one piece of stability in my life, and they wanted to take that away, too. I felt like I was suffocating, trapped in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. But little did I know, the worst was yet to come. Vanessa and Luke had one more surprise in store for me, one that would shatter what little faith I had left in the people I loved most. Living with Vanessa and Luke was a nightmare. They treated my home like a hotel, expecting me to cater to their every whim. I found myself constantly cleaning up after them, washing their dishes, and doing their laundry. It was as if they'd forgotten I was their mother, not their maid. One evening, I decided enough was enough. I called a family meeting, determined to set some boundaries. "Vanessa, Luke, we need to talk," I said, my voice firm. "If you're going to live here, you need to start contributing to the household chores and expenses." Vanessa rolled her eyes, a smirk playing on her lips. "Mom, we're just trying to save money for our wedding. You can't expect us to pay rent on top of that." "Yeah, Natalie," Luke chimed in, his tone dripping with condescension. "We're family. Isn't that what family does? Help each other out?" I felt my blood boil. How dare they use the family card against me? "Family also respects each other," I shot back. "And right now, I don't feel very respected in my own home." But my words fell on deaf ears. Vanessa and Luke continued to live as if they owned the place, leaving me to pick up the pieces. I started to dread coming home, knowing I'd be greeted by a sink full of dirty dishes and a living room littered with their belongings. To make matters worse, Ethan's lawyer kept hounding me about selling the house. "It's the only way to ensure a fair division of assets," he insisted, his voice cold and calculating. "Your husband has made it clear he wants his share of the property." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was the home where I'd raised my children, the place where I'd poured my heart and soul into creating a loving family. And now they wanted me to just give it up without a fight? I tried to reason with Ethan, hoping to appeal to his sense of decency. "Please, Ethan," I begged, my voice cracking with emotion. "This is our family home. Can't we find another way to settle this?" But he was unmoved, his eyes hard and unfeeling. "I'm sorry, Natalie, but I have to think about my future with my new family now. The house has to go." I hung up the phone, tears streaming down my face. It seemed like everyone I loved was turning against me, more concerned with their own selfish desires than the family we'd built together. That night, I lay awake in bed, my mind racing with thoughts of betrayal and revenge. How could they do this to me? After all the years I devoted to being a loving wife and mother, this was how they repaid me? I knew I had to fight back, to stand up for myself and what was rightfully mine. But how? I was just one woman against a system that seemed rigged against me. As I tossed and turned, a plan began to form in my mind. I would hire a lawyer of my own, someone who could help me navigate the treacherous waters of divorce court, and I would start digging into Ethan's finances, looking for any dirt I could use against him. I may have been down, but I was far from out. Ethan and Vanessa had no idea what I was capable of when pushed to the brink. They thought they could walk all over me, but they were about to learn the hard way that Natalie Pierce was not a woman to be underestimated. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, Vanessa and Luke dropped another bombshell on me. They called a family meeting, their faces smug and self-satisfied as they sat me down on the couch. "Mom, we have some big news," Vanessa announced, barely able to contain her excitement. "Luke and I are moving out. We've bought a condo." I stared at them in disbelief, my mouth hanging open. "A condo? But how? You said you were saving for your wedding." Luke chuckled, his arm draped possessively around Vanessa's shoulders. "Well, that's the other part of the news. Your dear ex-husband has been very generous. He's been financing our lifestyle and even helped with the down payment on the condo." I felt like I'd been slapped in the face. Ethan, the man who had betrayed me, was now conspiring with my own daughter against me. It was too much to bear. "Vanessa, how could you?" I whispered, my voice trembling with hurt and anger. "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me." She shrugged, her eyes cold and uncaring. "Oh, come on, Mom. It's not like you were going to help us out. You're too busy wallowing in your own self-pity to care about anyone else." I recoiled as if I'd been physically struck. My own daughter speaking to me with such cruelty and disdain. I hardly recognized the woman sitting before me. "And honestly, Mom," Vanessa continued, her voice dripping with condescension, "it's time you started taking care of yourself. I mean, look at you. When was the last time you bought new clothes or got a haircut? You're letting yourself go." I glanced down at my worn jeans and faded t-shirt, suddenly feeling self-conscious. It was true, I hadn't been taking care of myself lately. But, with everything going on, who could blame me? Luke nodded in agreement, his eyes raking over me with a mixture of pity and disgust. "Vanessa's right, Natalie. You're not getting any younger. If you want to attract a new man, you're going to have to step up your game." I felt a wave of humiliation wash over me. My own daughter and her fiancé, judging me and mocking me in my own home. It was too much to bear. "Get out," I whispered, my voice shaking with barely contained rage. "Get out of my house, both of you, and don't come back." Vanessa and Luke exchanged a glance, their expressions a mixture of surprise and amusement. "Fine," Vanessa said, standing up and smoothing her designer dress. "We'll be out by the end of the week, but don't come crying to us when you're all alone and miserable." With that, they walked out of the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I collapsed onto the couch, my body shaking with sobs. How had my life come to this? My husband had left me. My daughter had betrayed me, and now I was going to be all alone in this big empty house. But as I sat there, wallowing in my own misery, a thought occurred to me. I wasn't going to let them win. I wasn't going to let Ethan and Vanessa and Luke destroy me. I was going to fight back, and I was going to make them pay for what they'd done. I stood up, wiping the tears from my face. It was time to take control of my life, to show them what Natalie Pierce was really made of. I was going to hire the best divorce attorney in town, and I was going to make sure I got everything I deserved in the settlement. And as for Vanessa and Luke, they had no idea what was coming for them. They thought they could just walk away and leave me with nothing, but they were wrong. I was going to make them regret the day they ever crossed me. The day after Vanessa and Luke's cruel announcement, I decided to take stock of my finances. I had always trusted Ethan to handle our money, but now I couldn't help but wonder if he had been hiding something from me. I logged into our joint savings account, my heart pounding with anticipation. What I saw there made my blood run cold. The account, which had once held a substantial sum, was now nearly empty. Ethan had drained it, leaving me with barely enough to cover the mortgage. I sat back in my chair, my mind reeling. How could he do this to me, to our family? I had always been so careful with money, scrimping and saving to ensure we had a comfortable future. And now, it was all gone. Just then the doorbell rang. I dragged myself to the front door, only to find Vanessa and Luke standing there, their faces etched with false concern. "Mom, we need to talk," Vanessa said, pushing past me into the house. "It's about the divorce settlement." I followed them into the living room, my stomach churning with dread. "What about it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Luke cleared his throat, his eyes darting around the room. "Well, Vanessa and I were thinking, with Dad's assets frozen, it might be best if you just sell the house and give us the proceeds. That way, we can all move on with our lives." I stared at them in disbelief, my mouth hanging open. "You want me to sell my home? The place where I raised my children? And give you the money?" Vanessa rolled her eyes, her arms crossed over her chest. "Oh, come on, Mom. It's not like you need this big house all to yourself. And Luke and I could really use the money to furnish our new condo." I felt a wave of anger wash over me, hot and fierce. How dare they? How dare they come into my home and try to manipulate me like this? "Absolutely not," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "This is my home, and I'm not giving it up. Not for you. Not for anyone." Luke's face twisted into a sneer, his eyes narrowing with contempt. "Fine, but don't come crying to us when you can't afford to keep the lights on. We're done here." With that, they stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind them. I collapsed onto the couch, my head in my hands. I had never felt so alone, so betrayed. My own flesh and blood, turning against me like this. But as I sat there, wallowing in my own misery, a thought occurred to me. I wasn't going to let them win. I wasn't going to let Ethan and Vanessa and Luke take everything from me. I was going to fight back, and I was going to make them pay. I picked up the phone and dialed the number of a divorce attorney I had seen advertised on TV. "Hello," I said, my voice steady and determined. "My name is Natalie Pierce, and I need your help. My husband has been hiding assets from me, and I want to make sure I get what I deserve in the divorce settlement." The attorney listened intently, asking me questions about my situation. By the end of the call, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could come out of this nightmare with my dignity intact, but I knew it wasn't going to be easy. Ethan and Vanessa and Luke were formidable opponents, and they would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. I was going to have to be smarter, tougher, and more ruthless than I had ever been before. I stood up, squaring my shoulders. It was time to take control of my life, to show them what Natalie Pierce was really made of. I was going to hire a private investigator to uncover all of Ethan's dirty secrets, and I was going to use them to destroy him in court. And as for Vanessa and Luke, they had no idea what was coming for them. They thought they could just walk away and leave me with nothing, but they were wrong. I was going to make them regret the day they ever crossed me. The next morning, I woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. I wasn't going to let Ethan and Vanessa destroy me without a fight. I picked up the phone and called the divorce attorney I had spoken to the day before. "Miss Pierce, I'm glad you called," the attorney said, her voice crisp and professional. "I've been thinking about your case, and I believe we have a strong chance of getting you a favorable settlement." I felt a glimmer of hope, but I knew it wasn't going to be easy. "What do we need to do?" I asked, my voice steady. "First, we need to gather evidence of your husband's financial misdeeds," the attorney said. "I recommend hiring a private investigator to dig into his records and uncover any hidden assets." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "I can do that. What else?" "We'll also need to build a case for why you deserve to keep the house and receive alimony," the attorney continued. "I'll need you to provide documentation of your marriage, your financial contributions to the household, and any sacrifices you made for the sake of your family." I felt a lump form in my throat. I had given up so much for Ethan and our children, and now it seemed like it had all been for nothing. But I pushed those thoughts aside and focused on the task at hand. "I'll get you everything you need," I said, my voice firm. Over the next few weeks, I worked tirelessly with the attorney and the private investigator to build my case. The PI uncovered evidence of Ethan's extensive financial misdeeds, including hidden offshore accounts and investments he had never told me about. I was stunned by the depth of his deception. How could the man I had loved and trusted for so many years be capable of such betrayal? But I didn't have time to dwell on those thoughts. I had to focus on the fight ahead. Finally, the day of the confrontation arrived. I invited Ethan over to the house, telling him I wanted to discuss the divorce settlement. When he arrived, he was surprised to find me sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of documents in front of me. "What's all this?" he asked, his voice wary. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "This, my dear husband, is evidence of your extensive financial misdeeds. Hidden accounts, investments, all the money you've been funneling away behind my back." Ethan's face paled, and he took a step back. "Natally, I can explain." But I held up a hand, cutting him off. "Save it, Ethan. I know everything. And if you don't agree to a fair settlement, I'll make sure the judge knows everything, too." Ethan's eyes narrowed, and for a moment I thought he might lash out at me. But then his shoulders slumped, and he let out a defeated sigh. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I leaned forward, my eyes locked on his. "I want the house, and I want alimony. And if you don't agree, I'll expose every dirty secret you've ever tried to hide." Ethan's jaw clenched, but he knew he was beaten. "Fine," he spat out. "You'll get what you want." I sat back in my chair, a sense of triumph washing over me. I had done it. I had stood up to Ethan and won. But even as I savored my victory, I knew the battle was far from over. Vanessa and Luke were still out there, and they would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. I had to be ready for them. I had to be stronger, smarter, and more ruthless than ever before. But for now, I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. I had taken the first step towards reclaiming my life, and I wasn't going to let anyone stand in my way. The day of the divorce hearing arrived, and I walked into the courthouse with my head held high. My attorney had assured me that we had a strong case, but I couldn't help feeling a sense of trepidation. As I took my seat in the courtroom, I caught sight of Ethan sitting at the opposite table. He looked haggard and worn, as if the stress of the divorce had taken its toll on him, but I felt no sympathy for him. He had brought this upon himself. The judge called the court to order, and my attorney stood up to present our case. She laid out the evidence of Ethan's financial misdeeds, painting a picture of a man who had consistently lied and cheated his way through our marriage. Ethan's attorney tried to counter our arguments, but it was clear that he was fighting a losing battle. The evidence was overwhelming, and even the judge seemed skeptical of Ethan's claims. Finally, it was time for Ethan to take the stand. My attorney grilled him mercilessly, forcing him to admit to his lies and deceptions. With each admission, I could see his credibility crumbling before the court's eyes. And then, in a moment of desperation, Ethan lashed out at me. "You're one to talk about honesty, Natalie," he snarled. "You've been lying to me for years, pretending to be the perfect wife while you were really just a cold, heartless bitch." The courtroom fell silent, and I could feel all eyes on me. But I refused to let Ethan's words get to me. I stood up, my voice steady and clear. "Your Honor, I have been a devoted wife and mother for 25 years. I have sacrificed everything for my family, only to be betrayed and abandoned by the man I trusted most. Ethan's lies and manipulations have caused me immeasurable pain and suffering, and I am asking the court to grant me what I am rightfully owed." The judge nodded, his expression unreadable. And then, after what felt like an eternity, he delivered his ruling. "After careful consideration of the evidence presented, I am granting Mrs. Pierce's request for a favorable divorce settlement. She will retain ownership of the family home and receive alimony payments from Mr. Pierce. Furthermore, I am ordering Mr. Pierce to pay Mrs. Pierce's legal fees and court costs." I felt a wave of relief wash over me, and I had to fight back tears of joy. I had won. I had beaten Ethan at his own game. As I walked out of the courthouse, I caught sight of Ethan standing on the steps, his face contorted with rage. He stormed over to me, his eyes blazing with fury. "You think you've won, Natalie?" he snarled. "You think you can just take everything from me and walk away? Well, think again. I'll make you pay for this, I swear to God." But I just smiled, my voice calm and steady. "You've already lost, Ethan. You've lost your wife, your children, and your dignity. There's nothing left for you to take from me." With that, I turned and walked away, leaving Ethan to stew in his own bitterness and resentment. I had faced my demons and emerged victorious, and nothing he could say or do could take that away from me. But even as I savored my triumph, I knew that my battle was far from over. Vanessa and Luke were still out there, and they would be furious when they learned of the court's decision. I had to be prepared for their retaliation. I had to be ready to fight back with everything I had. But for now, I allowed myself a moment of peace. I had taken back control of my life, and I was never going to let anyone take it from me again. A few weeks after the divorce settlement, I received a frantic call from Vanessa. "Mom, you have to help us," she pleaded, her voice trembling with panic. "The bank is foreclosing on our condo. We missed too many payments, and now they're saying we have to move out." I felt a twinge of satisfaction at the news. After all the pain and suffering they had caused me, it seemed only fitting that Vanessa and Luke were now facing the consequences of their own actions. But I kept my voice neutral as I replied, "I'm sorry to hear that, Vanessa, but I'm not sure what you expect me to do about it." "Mom, please," Vanessa begged. "We have nowhere else to go. Can't we just stay with you for a little while until we get back on our feet?" I almost laughed out loud at the irony of the situation. Just a few short months ago, Vanessa and Luke had been more than happy to leave me high and dry, with no regard for my own well-being. And now they were coming to me for help? But I kept my composure as I replied, "I'm afraid that won't be possible, Vanessa. You and Luke are adults, and you need to take responsibility for your own choices. I can't keep bailing you out every time you get into trouble." There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and then Vanessa's voice turned cold and bitter. "Fine. I should have known better than to ask for your help. You've always been a selfish, heartless bitch." I felt a surge of anger at her words, but I refused to let her see how much they hurt me. "Goodbye, Vanessa," I said firmly, and then I hung up the phone. A few days later, I received another call, this time from Ethan's mistress. "Natalie, it's me," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "I just wanted to let you know that I'm leaving Ethan. I can't do this anymore." I felt a sense of grim satisfaction at the news. It seemed that Ethan's web of lies and deceit was finally unraveling, and everyone he had hurt was starting to turn against him. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, trying to keep the triumph out of my voice. "But I can't say I'm surprised. Ethan has a way of using people and then discarding them when he's done." The mistress was silent for a moment, and then she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry, Natalie. I never meant to hurt you. I was just so caught up in Ethan's charm and promises that I didn't stop to think about the consequences." I felt a sudden rush of empathy for the woman on the other end of the line. She had been just as much a victim of Ethan's manipulations as I had been. "I understand," I said softly, "and I appreciate your apology, but now it's time for both of us to move on and rebuild our lives without Ethan." The mistress agreed, and we ended the call on a note of mutual understanding and respect. As I hung up the phone, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was truly free. Free from Ethan's lies and manipulations, free from Vanessa and Luke's selfishness and greed. I had faced my demons and emerged victorious, and now it was time for me to start a new chapter in my life. A chapter filled with hope, healing, and the promise of a brighter future. I knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. I had proven to myself that I was stronger than I ever imagined, and I knew that I could handle anything that life threw my way. With a smile on my face and a spring in my step, I walked out of my house and into the bright, sunny day, ready to embrace whatever the future had in store for me. As I sat in my living room, surrounded by the familiar comforts of home, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought me to this moment. Just a few short months ago, my life had been turned upside down by the selfishness and betrayal of those closest to me. Ethan, the man I had loved and trusted for 25 years, had abandoned me for a younger woman and left me to pick up the pieces of our shattered marriage. Vanessa and Luke, the children I had raised and nurtured, had turned their backs on me and tried to take advantage of my vulnerability. But through it all, I had found a strength and resilience within myself that I never knew I possessed. I had fought back against their lies and manipulations, and I had emerged victorious. Now, as I looked around at the home that I had fought so hard to keep, I felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. This was my sanctuary, my refuge from the chaos and pain of the outside world. I thought back to the moment when Ethan had threatened me outside the courthouse, his eyes blazing with fury and resentment. "You'll pay for this, Natalie," he had snarled. "I'll make sure of it." But I had stood my ground, my voice calm and steady. "You've already lost, Ethan," I had replied. "There's nothing left for you to take from me." And I had been right. In the weeks and months that followed, I watched as Ethan's life unraveled before my eyes. His mistress left him, his assets were frozen, and he was facing the legal consequences of his actions. Vanessa and Luke, too, had faced the repercussions of their choices. Their condo had been foreclosed, and they had been left with nowhere to go. They had come crawling back to me, begging for help and forgiveness. But I had stood firm in my resolve. "You are adults," I had told them, "and you need to take responsibility for your own choices. I cannot keep bailing you out every time you get into trouble." It had been a difficult decision, but I knew that it was the right one. Vanessa and Luke needed to learn that their actions had consequences, and that they couldn't always rely on others to clean up their messes. As for me, I had found a new sense of purpose and fulfillment in my life. I had transformed my home into a successful bed and breakfast, welcoming guests from all over the world and sharing with them the beauty and warmth of my hospitality. I had also reconnected with old friends and made new ones, building a support system of people who truly cared about me and had my best interests at heart. And through it all, I had learned to embrace my own happiness and well-being. I no longer defined myself by my relationships with others, but by my own strengths and accomplishments. As I sat in my living room, surrounded by the evidence of my hard work and determination, I felt a sense of peace and contentment wash over me. I had faced my demons and emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. I knew that there would be challenges and obstacles ahead, but I was ready to face them head-on. I had proven to myself that I was capable of overcoming anything that life threw my way, and I knew that I would continue to do so. With a smile on my face and a heart full of hope, I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the beautiful world beyond. The future was bright and full of possibility, and I was ready to embrace it with open arms.
I walked out confidently as the elevator doors opened on the floor where my department was located. I let out a loud cry as soon as I saw my manager, Michael. "Michael, I've just cleared up the misunderstanding with the client." I saw a familiar face after I finished my report. That face also turned to face me. She wouldn't remember me at all. She wouldn't be able to identify a simple Japanese man who has aged into a typical middle-aged visage, even if she did. To my astonishment, however, the blonde beauty came running toward me, saying, "My name is James. My age is 37. I started working for this company in the middle of my career. I haven't done well in sales. I put up with Michael reprimanding me every day. Hey, are you aware of the circumstances? You must begin producing outcomes." Frustrated, Michael ran his fingers through his hair. "I recruited you since you expressed throughout your interview that you were excited about working here. Why aren't you able to close any deals then?" "To be honest, I want to know the answer for myself. I have a lot of passion. For the benefit of the business, I want to market our products and get contracts. However, when I'm around clients, my excitement tends to backfire for some reason. It never results in a signed deal, and I am unable to express what I need to say. No matter how many simulations I run or how much I practice at home, I can hardly say half of what I practiced. I freeze when I know the client is going to make a choice. The outcome is consistently the same. You simply aren't suited for sales. Perhaps you ought to consider changing occupations." I have also had the similar thought. I'm not good at sales. "No," I answered, continuing bending my head deeply. "I'd like to keep trying." "Give me another chance, please." Michael sighed once more. "I have to do it myself since you can't close transactions. You could lose your job if you continue to put things off. I'm going to take care of some cold calls. You remain here and complete that documentation." Michael then departed for an unforeseen sales call. I turned to the documents and bowed deeply to his retreating back. I'm genuinely skilled at this type of work. I was struck with frustration and a sense of futility when I considered how, as a salesperson, I was unable to add to the company's profitability. I must, however, give it my all for the benefit of the business. I whispered to myself, I will, and went back to work. After that, months went by. I began to get contracts here and there with Michael's assistance. Nevertheless, my performance was still far behind that of my coworkers, but the little victories gave me some self-assurance, and I noticed that I was less nervous in customer meetings. Looks like you're finally getting the hang of it, Michael even said, which made me quite delighted. One day, an unusual morning meeting was called. Listen up. The CEO from the U.S. is visiting next week. My heart skipped a beat when I heard that. Apparently, they were coming because the post-acquisition performance had fallen below expectations. They'd be conducting a review to identify issues. It's a deeply embarrassing visit for us. Michael's words silenced the murmurs in the room. For the next week, work yourselves to the bone and boost those numbers even a little. This is an American company now. Be ready for the possibility that they might decide to cut us loose if they find us unnecessary. Straightening up at Michael's words, we all replied firmly. The company had been acquired by an American firm a year ago. I joined after the acquisition, but most of my department had been here since before. They told me they were nervous about restructuring and layoffs at first, but things stayed relatively unchanged until now. But this sudden visit from the CEO, and for such a reason, put everyone on edge. Naturally, my own targets were raised higher than ever before. The CEO may have turned a blind eye up until now, but this was a situation serious enough to bring them here personally. Get those contracts signed no matter what. Do you understand? Michael sternly ordered. I hurriedly left the department. I threw myself into sales with everything I had. I wanted to bring back results that would reassure the CEO, even if only slightly. With that determination, I tackled countless cold calls, something I was still far from comfortable with. The results were better than usual, but only slightly. A sense of shame smoldered inside me. On top of that, Michael had the nerve to say, "For you, this is actually pretty good work," even though my performance still didn't hold a candle to my coworkers. I clenched my teeth in frustration at my own lackluster results. The following week, the day of the CEO's visit finally arrived. The tension in the office was palpable, and I'd already worked up a sweat helping clean the premises since early morning. Amidst all this, the phone rang and Michael answered it. Soon after, I heard him call in for me. "James, get over here now." His voice echoed through the department, carrying an unmistakable urgency. It seemed there was a complaint. Apparently, the number of contracted units didn't match the number delivered. But after signing the contract, I discussed with their rep, and they decided to increase the order. I tried to explain frantically as I rifled through my desk. Here's a copy of the additional contract. I showed it to Michael, but he looked exasperated. They said they weren't aware of any additions. Just go over there and fix this on the day the CEO is visiting. Of all times, Michael cradled his head in his hands. I quickly bowed. Understood. I'll head over immediately. Gathering the necessary documents and rushing out of the department, I arrived at the first floor via the elevator near the reception desk. A crowd of people had gathered, and among them was a blonde-haired woman. Ah! A small sound escaped my lips before I could stop it. At that moment, another elevator opened and Michael came storming out. "James, seriously? You forgot this. You can't fix anything without it." Michael was fuming, waving the additional contract in his hand. Oh, in my haste, I had apparently left the additional contract with Michael after showing it to him earlier. "Pull yourself together, James. Take a deep breath." Deep breath. All right. Now go, Michael instructed. Following his instructions, I took a deep breath and dashed out the door at his signal. As I moved, I thought I caught a faint trace of perfume in the air. A few hours later, I returned to the office, utterly exhausted. The person with whom I had originally finalized the additional contract had called in sick, leaving me to negotiate persistently with one of the other representatives from the earlier meeting. The image of blonde hair flickered in my mind repeatedly, and each time it gave me a strange sense of courage. In the end, I managed to persuade them about the additional contract, and they agreed to proceed with the delivery as planned. They even saw me off with a smile, but it felt like I had poured every ounce of energy I had into the effort, leaving me utterly drained. I wanted nothing more than to head straight home, but I had to report back first. At the company's entrance, I straightened my posture, summoning what little strength I had left, and walked through the automatic doors. Riding the elevator up to my department's floor, I stepped out with determination. The moment I spotted Michael, I raised my voice. "Michael, I've resolved the client's misunderstanding." After delivering my report, I noticed a familiar face. That face was looking at me too. There's no way she remembers me. Even if she does, she wouldn't recognize a plain Japanese face that's now aged into a middle-aged one. But contrary to my expectations, the blonde beauty ran straight toward me and exclaimed, "James," before throwing her arms around me in a hug. The people around us were stunned, and I didn't understand what was happening either. I stared at her in disbelief. "Cindy? Could it be? Do you remember me?" I asked in English. Her eyes sparkled as she nodded emphatically. "Of course I remember you, James. I've missed you. What are you doing here?" I couldn't help but smile faintly. "Sauls, I wanted to be helpful to you in some way, though my performance has been terrible." It was only then that I noticed the stares from those around us. Embarrassed, I stepped back from Cindy and began explaining. "The truth is, as a child, I have lived in the U.S. because of my parents' work. I spent so much time abroad that I even forgot how to speak Japanese at one point. During those years, my favorite hobby was creating my own games. I loved programming games, which transcended language barriers and became a source of comfort for me, especially as a kid. I wanted to create games that could transcend the boundaries of countries. With that dream in my heart, I devoted myself to game development from a young age. It was during high school that I met Cindy. With her radiant blonde hair, flawless skin, and striking features, she was incredibly popular, not to mention wealthy. She was always surrounded by a group of friends like an entourage. Honestly, she seemed like someone who existed in a completely different world from mine. One day, while I was sitting outside reading a book, Cindy passed by. Many of the students at school had never seen the colorful packed lunches that Japanese students often brought, and they were intrigued. But a few in her group pointed at me and muttered words like, "Poor." Cindy and her friends always ate lunch in the cafeteria. It was apparently a sign of being wealthy. But I loved the lunches my mother made for me. I wasn't eating a packed lunch and reading to pass the time because I was poor. That conviction ran deep within me, so their comments didn't bother me at all. Then one of Cindy's entourage spoke to me, rambling on about how Cindy was the daughter of a major corporation CEO and would eventually inherit the company. The details I hadn't asked for. "That must be tough," I replied casually. Cindy asked me in a calm voice, "Are you saying that my life is tough?" I tilted my head slightly. "Well, I can't say for sure if it's tough for you, but if I were in your position, I think it's tough." Cindy bit her lip lightly. "I'm rich and privileged, so it's not tough." I studied her face carefully. Being rich doesn't mean life isn't tough. Being privileged doesn't mean life isn't hard. Everyone has their struggles. Taking on the pressure of running a big company someday, isn't that tough? Cindy's eyes widened slightly, as if she'd been struck by my words. Her friends chimed in, "Cindy's smart, so there's no way it's tough for her." I don't think that's right. Just because someone is privileged doesn't mean their life isn't tough. You shouldn't make assumptions like that. With that, I dropped my gaze back to my book. I felt like arguing wouldn't lead anywhere. Cindy and her entourage left, seemingly unimpressed by my response. But from that day forward, Cindy started speaking to me occasionally. She'd glance at the programming books I was reading and say things like, "Do you actually understand what this says? James, it's all Greek to me," while furrowing her brow. Sometimes she'd say things like, "I feel like having lunch outside today, but honestly, eating with so many friends isn't that your thing, James? Whatever. It doesn't matter." Then during lunch, Cindy appeared in front of me, glancing around nervously to make sure no one saw her. I snuck out through the small bathroom window. They're probably all looking for me right now. Hey, we can't stay here. They'll find us. Let's go somewhere else, she said with a mischievous grin. But I shook my head and tried to reason with her. It's not fair for your friends to keep searching for you. Should I tell them you're feeling unwell? Cindy's eyes widened in surprise. James, even though they said all those mean things to you, are you telling me it's wrong for people like that to go around looking for me? I smiled lightly and nodded. That wasn't even close to being mean enough to bother me. I then explained a harmless excuse to her group and let them know Cindy was fine. Afterward, Cindy and I shared lunch together. Soon after, Cindy openly announced to everyone that she'd be eating lunch with me from then on. She even said, with a bright smile, that she wanted it to be just the two of us from that day forward. Cindy and I began having lunch together alone. Eventually, our lunches turned into something more, and we naturally began dating. Dating Cindy was pure joy. Every time we met, I found myself falling more in love with her. Cindy stayed close by my side, always supportive. As for the future, I tried not to think about it. A rich heir to a major company and a plain, unremarkable Japanese guy like me. There was no way it could work out in the long run. But we were young, and we didn't dwell on such thoughts. Instead, we immersed ourselves in our sweet romance. Things changed during our second year of high school. My parents decided to move back to Japan, and naturally, I had to go with them. I declared to Cindy that I would return to the U.S. for college and come back to her. Cindy said, "Our company is aiming to expand into the aita industry. We need someone like you, James, a genius who can create games on his own. If you contribute to our company, I'm sure we'll be able to get married. So promise me you'll come back." With such conviction, we decided to try a long-distance relationship between Japan and the U.S. I truly believed we could make it work, but as young as we were, we lacked the patience for it. The time difference between the U.S. and Japan made communication challenging. Back then, international calls were not something you could make casually. Though Cindy's family was wealthy, her parents didn't allow her to spend money frivolously. They believed in raising her with grounded values. As for me, I came from a typical middle-class family. Frequent international calls and long conversations weren't something we could afford. The internet was still in its early stages, which only added to the frustration. It was Cindy who broke first. "Why don't you call me? Why are you always so tired?" she asked. I was struggling in Japan, trying to prepare for admission to American university. The American curriculum was completely different, and just keeping up with my high school classes was hard enough. I felt bad, but my responses to her became more and more neglectful. After countless arguments, Cindy quietly said goodbye. At that time, I didn't have the energy to beg her to stay. "I've met someone else. I can't help it. We never see each other," she said. I nodded weakly. "I'll always wish for your happiness, Cindy. I'll pray from Japan for your company's success." Those were the last words I said to Cindy, and so we broke up without the goal of returning to the U.S. I enrolled in a Japanese university and eventually joined a major company as a systems engineer. Despite my ordinary appearance, I was recognized as a genius programmer, highly valued for my technical skills and contributions to the company. Because I was so well regarded, I attracted a fair amount of attention from women. There were times when things seemed promising, but I was naturally shy and always busy with work. Those opportunities eventually fizzled out, and I settled into a solitary lifestyle. One day, I came across shocking news. Cindy had become the CEO of her family's company after her father's sudden death. The ambitious new CEO was expanding aggressively, even acquiring a Japanese company. She planned to further expand the business. "Even from Japan, I can still help," I muttered to myself. With that determination, I submitted my resignation to the company where I had worked for many years. I applied to the company Cindy had acquired, despite having no experience in sales. During the interview, I passionately explained my reasons for wanting to join, and somehow I got the job. A high turnover of anxious employees following the acquisition was probably one reason why an inexperienced person like me was hired. And so here I was, struggling to secure contracts but still working as an employee of Cindy's company. When I finished telling my story to my colleagues, they were all wide-eyed with disbelief. Taking an unfamiliar job for a woman you broke up with nearly 20 years ago, that's reckless to the point of insanity, one of them said. I smiled bitterly. I think so too. Honestly, I feel like a leech, not being able to contribute much. I scratched my head and turned to face Cindy, but I'll do my best to be of help. Someday, please let me keep working here. I bowed deeply to her. Cindy smiled faintly. Silly man, she said before turning on her heel and walking toward the elevator. I've identified the main issues. I'll send you my improvement plan by next month, were her parting words. Cindy stepped into the elevator and quickly left the department. Feeling a twinge of sadness, I returned to my work. After work, I found myself trudging home, lost in thought. I hadn't seen Cindy again after that. She was probably busy inspecting other floors, but she never returned to the sales department. A few hours later, I heard that the CEO had already completed her inspection and left. My heart sank just a little. I had allowed myself to hope, even if just a little, that she still felt nostalgic about me. Maybe she'd come back to the sales department. Maybe we'd exchange contact information. At the very least, I knew she was still single. The faint hope I had, that maybe since she didn't have anyone in her life, there might still be a chance, was completely shattered. She's probably already on a plane by now, I thought. She must be incredibly busy, flying all the way to Japan, not even sightseeing and heading straight back. Just thinking about it made my head spin. Turning into the narrow alley, I approached the apartment building where I lived. When I casually looked up at the door to my second-floor unit, I nearly jumped out of my skin. Cindy was standing there, smiling and waving at me. "Hi, I've been waiting for you." The sight of the CEO of a massive American corporation standing in front of the shabby door of my old apartment, dressed in a tailored dress and accompanied by a towering man who was clearly her bodyguard, was beyond surreal. I invited Cindy inside. The man beside her was apparently both her bodyguard and secretary. Cindy told him to wait outside, but I objected. However, I told him that waiting right in front of the door would inconvenience my neighbors. The bodyguard pleaded, explaining that he couldn't be separated from Cindy no matter what, and asked if he could wait somewhere nearby. In the end, because Cindy insisted on being alone with me, I let the bodyguard wait in my bedroom. Having a bodyguard in my bedroom, this is so weird, I muttered while nervously making tea. Cindy laughed, her voice light and carefree. "It's his job. You could have just let him wait outside. You're as kind as ever, James." But honestly, I wasn't being kind. I was worried about rumors spreading if a burly man loitered outside my door. Not that it mattered, given that the sight of a blonde beauty and her bodyguard at my apartment had probably already drawn plenty of attention. "How do you even know where I live?" I asked, speaking English again after so long, feeling clumsy. "Who do you think I am?" Cindy replied, a teasing glint in her eyes. "Right, I work for her company after all." "That's an abuse of power," I muttered in Japanese. Cindy narrowed her eyes sharply. "You haven't changed a bit, James, still muttering in Japanese whenever you don't want me to hear something." Her observation made me stick my tongue out playfully. "Well, it's convenient that you can't speak Japanese," I chuckled, but Cindy pulled out her phone. "Guess I'll let the translator handle it," she said. "Technology could be annoyingly efficient sometimes." "So, what is it? You tracked down my address and waited for me? You could have just met me at the office." I tried to mask my embarrassment by pouting. Even though her visit filled me with joy, I couldn't help but act composed. Cindy's eyes softened, and she looked at me with a hint of vulnerability. "James, did you not want to see me?" Her question left me speechless. The moment I arrived at the office, I heard someone say, "James." I turned around immediately, but you were already out the automatic doors. I tried to convince myself it was a mistake, that it wasn't you, but during the whole inspection, I couldn't stop thinking about you. I couldn't focus on anything else. I sighed deeply. I had to go apologize to a client. I wanted to call out to Cindy when I saw her, but you saw me at my worst, didn't you? I glanced at Cindy, who chuckled softly. You shouldn't forget something as important as a contract, she teased, clearly having overheard Michael scolding me. I turned bright red. If we were going to meet again, I wanted to look cool, I muttered. Cindy gently placed her hand on my shoulder. You already do. Her words made me look at her. No matter what kind of James you are, you're always cool. But if you truly wanted to support me, why didn't you come to the U.S.? Her question made me lower my gaze, because you broke up with me so thoroughly. Tears welled up in Cindy's eyes. But I wanted to see you all this time. I erased your number and all your contact information to move on, but the James in my heart never disappeared. No matter who I dated, no matter how much I buried myself in work, it was always you. Without thinking, I wrapped Cindy in a tight embrace. I couldn't stop thinking about you either, Cindy. I've always regretted not begging you to stay, not insisting that I wanted to go to the U.S. I thought about going so many times, but I was too much of a coward. I cupped her cheeks in my hands and rested my forehead against hers. Do you have someone now? Cindy shook her head. That was all the confirmation I needed. I kissed her. She kissed me back. After a sweet, lingering kiss, I gazed into her eyes. Let's start over. Tears rolled down Cindy's cheeks. Yes. Hearing her answer, we kissed again. I completely forgot about the bodyguard waiting in my bedroom. 2 years after reuniting with Cindy, I am now living in the U.S., not just as her husband, but also as a system engineer for her company. I had thought her days were busy, but the reality far exceeded my imagination. Cindy managed to schedule packed to the minute every day, leaving no time for dates. In the beginning, back then, she was surrounded by all kinds of people. There were those who were devoted to her, those scheming to dethrone her, and those trying to ingratiate themselves with her. Particularly, those who had been loyal to her father struggled to accept her leadership. They offered her endless advice, which she found overbearing. Their attachment to her predecessor made her feel like they didn't truly believe in her. As a result, Cindy tried to handle everything herself, trusting no one to help her. It was an unsustainable way to live. I repeatedly urged Cindy to lighten her load, even just a little. Each time she would respond with, James, you just don't understand. Just like in high school. I told her, everyone loves you, Cindy. You don't have enemies. Trust them. Back in high school, Cindy's friends had been visibly disheartened when she started spending her lunches with me. When we began dating, everyone opposed it, not out of malice, but because they cared about her. But all of it, the devotion, the concern, and even the opposition, came from a place of genuine care for Cindy. They simply wanted to be with her before her wealth or her status as an heiress. Cindy possessed an innate charm as a person. Anyone who spent time with her was drawn to that charm, feeling an irresistible desire to stay by her side and support her. I felt the same way, so I knew it had to be true. After much persuasion, Cindy finally agreed to delegate some of her work to me. When I first moved to America, I worked as her secretary. Over time, I began redistributing the tasks she entrusted to me, assigning them to the most suitable people. At first, Cindy protested, but as she saw how effectively the work was being managed, she gradually started to trust others. Now, I've stepped away from my role as her secretary and work as a system engineer instead. Being her secretary wasn't my calling. Being able to stay by her side was certainly a perk, but that's not what work is about. I usually get home a little earlier than Cindy. As I walk through the door, I'm greeted by our adorable daughter, cradled in the babysitter's arms. After giving her a big hug, I head straight to the kitchen. While the babysitter keeps my daughter entertained, I start preparing dinner. Cindy always looks forward to my cooking more than anything, so I put my heart into making delicious meals just for her. Your food reminds me of our high school lunches, she often says. Back in high school, those packed lunches were lovingly prepared by my mom. Sometimes, Cindy would beg me for a piece of sweet rolled omelette or an octopus-shaped sausage, and I'd happily pop it into her mouth. That memory of happiness stayed with her, and she once asked me to recreate those flavors. I called my mom for the recipes and took Cindy on a picnic, where we enjoyed lunch outdoors together. Since then, I've taken over all the cooking. By the time I finish most of the dinner prep, Cindy comes home. I thank the babysitter and send her off, leaving the three of us to spend time together as a family. We sit down at the dinner table, sharing a happy meal and talking about the fun moments we had during the day. Smiles all around. What is this? Only resumes of the second and third grade, eh? I don't see anyone from Harvard University. While examining the resumes of the job seekers who had arrived at the interview location, a Harvard University graduate interviewer made this statement. You know, he went on, I'm a Harvard University graduate. Do you understand? I'm superior to you folks, though. He was bragging that he had graduated from Harvard University. He kept asking questions that appeared as challenging as the entrance examinations for Harvard or Stanford, yet it was unclear if they were required for this particular interview. The challenge was so overwhelming to the job searchers at the venue that many hung their heads, unable to respond. I was responding to every question in the midst of this. The interviewers began making irrational remarks and seemed to despise me. You seem quite arrogant, don't you? Okay, figure this out. I'll offer you $2 million and hire you right away if you can figure this out. As he handed over a piece of paper, he had a smug expression on his face, thinking it was impossible. There was a handwritten arithmetic problem on the printout. I muttered a single word as I looked at the printout's inquiry. Math. Hey, well, I don't think someone of your caliber could do it. He was a Harvard University graduate, and he undoubtedly wanted to claim that I couldn't possibly defeat him. However, I answered with confidence while focusing on the question at hand. You better get that $2 million ready now. My confident words were not yet clear to the interviewer, and he was about to meet an unexpected end. Michael Johnson is my name. I'm just an average person who grew up in an ordinary family. Ordinary in academics and athletics, neither excellent nor poor, just ordinary. It's likely that my peers would respond normal. Everyone thinks I'm mediocre. In actuality, though, there is one thing in which I have complete faith. That's a big holdover from my childhood. I'll tell you a little bit of that tale now. Since the time of my grandparents, my family has operated a small tour company in the United States. I started helping out at the business with my grandma as soon as I got home from kindergarten. I was able to perform mental math by the first grade since I had grown up watching my grandmother deal with clients. That'll be $13.69. Oh, that's incredible, Michael. You're already capable of performing such challenging computations. A frequent customer took out two $10 as she was stating that. I handed him the change and accepted the money with a smug expression. Here's $6.31. The change can even be calculated. Hold on, did you just use a calculator? No, it's mental math. The usual customer appeared astonished when he heard that. It's impressive. Are you unfamiliar with using a calculator? No, I haven't. Since my grandparents used an abacus for all of their computations, their store lacked a cash register. There was no contemporary system like that found in convenience stores or supermarkets. My grandmother taught me how to perform arithmetic and use the abacus. You've just started elementary school, right? Yeah, I just entered this year. Wow, Michael, your smarts are incredible. He's going to be promising in the future. My grandparents always praised me, their proud grandson. Initially, I did calculations with the abacus I was taught to use. However, after seeing my grandmother calculate without using an abacus, I wanted to try it myself and asked her to teach me the tricks. It made me happy to be praised, so I helped out in the store every day, and mental arithmetic became fun for me. Even though I learned mental arithmetic at the first grade level, there were still mistakes. I messed up again. It's okay to make mistakes. Let's try it one more time. Even so, my grandparents encouraged me to practice mental arithmetic. They praised me when my answers were correct. Initially, I continued because I was happy to be praised, but gradually, I began to enjoy doing the calculations. The feeling of numbers fitting together in my mind like a puzzle, adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing, the fact that there was always an answer was fascinating, and I enjoyed it as if I were playing a game. Before I knew it, doing calculations had become my area of expertise, and it has now become the one thing I am truly confident in. Having an area of expertise in mental arithmetic made me start wondering about many other things. What's up? You've been staring at the sky for a while. Yeah, I was wondering why the sky changes color. You were thinking about something that difficult. My mom was incredibly surprised by my unexpected question. Once something piqued my interest, I wanted to know the answer. Like with calculations, I wanted a clear answer. So whenever something caught my interest, I would always ask my parents, grandparents, and homeroom teacher. My parents and teachers were happy about my curiosity and gladly taught me. If they could answer right away, they did so on the spot. If they didn't know, they went as far as to research and then teach me. Understanding something I didn't know felt the same as solving a calculation, and I found it fun. Becoming more and more engrossed, collecting knowledge became my hobby. I was always asking why and how. I was nicknamed Teach Me Kid by those around me, mimicked and teased, but my curiosity never stopped. And by the time I was in 3rd grade, it had powered up even more. As the trivia king, I was respected within the school. The reasons why the sky changes color, why the shape of the moon changes, why rainbows have 7 colors, how clouds are formed, the characteristics of dinosaurs, the ecology of bugs, plants, and flowers, the constellations of the seasons, and the myths associated with them. I learned anything and everything that interested me. There wasn't anyone else my age who knew as much about everything as I did. Entering middle school, new subjects sparked my curiosity again. I enjoyed acquiring new knowledge, and the trivia I had accumulated so far somewhat helped, making it feel like the world was expanding. I always liked reading, but upon entering middle school, I enjoyed reading literature with a more sophisticated level of thought. I was particularly drawn to chemistry. The properties of substances, the concept of atoms, and scientific reactions and experiments were all fascinating. German was challenging at first. However, once I started reading novels in German, I naturally became able to read and write. The different grammar from English sparked my interest again, although I hadn't delved deep into it during elementary school. Learning more about history was also fun. Looking back at history, I could see how America came to be, how it operated under its current system, the background of its economic development, its connections with other countries, and the global influence America has. Unable to contain my curiosity. Where is it? Oh, really? This is amazing. Mr. Martin was surprised at the question I brought, perhaps because it was unexpectedly challenging, and for good reason. The question I brought wasn't from the textbook used in class or even a reference book for freshmen. If it were at the freshman level, I wouldn't need to ask the teacher. I had already advanced my studies to the level that high school seniors study for entrance exams. This is from the free official practice tests, isn't it? Or are you studying from this? Mr. Martin looked at the free official practice tests with pleasure. Ah, this brings back memories. I used to solve tests from free official practice tests too. So, what don't you understand? Mr. Martin seemed to love mathematics. Seeing his reaction, I felt relieved that my sense of closeness was not misplaced. I became even more immersed in mathematics than before. Mr. Martin taught mathematics in a very fun and understandable way. His slightly different perspective from other teachers overflowed my curiosity. Above all, Mr. Martin looked innocent and joyful when talking about mathematics. From then on, learning mathematics from Mr. Martin became a part of my daily routine. He recommended workbooks to me and even created his own. I thought the questions Mr. Martin made were very beautiful. I couldn't help but enjoy proving them. He also secretly taught me how to solve problems not covered in class. Mr. Martin made even the formulas and geometric questions I struggled with understandable, making mathematics even more enjoyable and captivating for me. One day, as usual after school, I went to Mr. Martin, who seemed to be deep in thought. Hesitating to interrupt, I still spoke up. Mr. Martin, I have something I'd like to learn today too. Michael, right? All right, let's talk about mathematics today too. Mr. Martin always talked about mathematics with enthusiasm. Whether his counterpart was a high school student or not, he couldn't help but be happy and enjoy talking about mathematics. A pure love for the subject was evident. Spending time talking about mathematics with the teacher after school became indispensable for me. Mr. Martin and I transcended the teacher-student relationship to become comrades who loved mathematics. You really love mathematics, don't you, Mr. Martin? That's the same for you, isn't it? Oh, yes. I have a favor to ask of you today. As he said so, Mr. Martin took out a piece of copy paper and began writing on it with practiced ease. When he finished, he handed it to me. Here, this is my request to you. I was surprised when I saw his request. It was not a math question. Instead, this was what was written. Create an original math workbook by Michael Johnson and surpass the math teacher, Kevin Martin. What is this? I was so surprised at the unexpected request that I was speechless. Ignoring my reaction, the teacher continued. Michael, you've solved enough questions already. In terms of solving them, you're at the college level. That's why I want you to go beyond that. From being the solver, why not try becoming the creator of problems? I'm sure you'll find the world of mathematics expanding even more. Becoming the creator, the world expanding. Exactly. I can't let your talent go to waste. I want it to blossom. The world seen from the perspective of solving is different from that of creating. Of course, the world that becomes visible is different too. Mr. Martin was passionately explaining. I believe you, of all people, will surely discover the hidden fascinations of mathematics. Mr. Martin trusts me that much. I wanted to respond to his trust, and I also wanted to see the fascinations of mathematics that I hadn't seen yet. Thank you. I'll give it a try. All right. It won't be easy, but give it a go. I'm waiting for the questions you create, Michael. After returning home, I immediately started on the homework, but it was harder than I thought. If it were about creating exercises for use in class, I could do it right away. However, the assignment this time was to create an ultra-difficult one that even Mr. Martin couldn't solve. Yet, despite finding it difficult, I also found it enjoyable. I became so engrossed in the homework that I went to school sleep-deprived. After school, I hurriedly went to Mr. Martin. Mr. Martin, I made it. What do you think? Mr. Martin took the sheet from me and checked it. However, he solved it quite easily. I thought so. You solved it. After my words, Mr. Martin said, It's very well made. It's very elegant. I can really tell how much you love mathematics. But, Mr. Martin looked a bit disappointed as he glanced at my question. But what? You focused on making the question beautiful and neglected its difficulty. Ah, exactly. He hit the nail on the head. Indeed, halfway through, I stopped considering the difficulty level, thinking that if I were to create a question, it should be beautiful. Seeing me looking down, somewhat disappointed and sad, Mr. Martin said, However, to be able to create this much from the start is quite something. Next time, bring me a work you're confident in. I'm looking forward to Michael's challenge. Yes, next time I'll definitely impress you, Mr. Martin. Good. That's the spirit. I started creating again as soon as I got home. I was glad that Mr. Martin had expectations of me, and I think I began to feel the joy of creating exercises. However, I didn't want to make a question that was just difficult. I wanted it to be both beautiful and difficult. I worked on creating such a question every single day, and finally it was completed. This has to be it. Full of confidence, I went to show it to Mr. Martin. Mr. Martin took a bit longer to solve it than the first one I presented. I thought that the fact he took some time to solve it meant it was a better question than the last one. However, Mr. Martin gave me a strict assessment. Yes, it's a difficult one. It made me think a bit. You did well. But take another look at this. Saying that, he showed me my question. Do you notice anything? I realized what he meant. It's not beautiful. I mean, it's messy, right? Exactly. You were too focused on increasing its difficulty, weren't you? Unfortunately, I can't give a passing mark for this. A question that would impress Mr. Martin was not easy to create. It wasn't enough for it to be just difficult. It also had to be beautiful. The quality of beauty and difficulty had to be maintained. To create a question that was truly mine, I continued creating tirelessly. Before I knew it, 3 months had passed. Creating questions is this difficult, Pa. I was experiencing what Mr. Martin meant by the perspective of creating. Surely, not just anyone could do this, but he believed I could. To live up to that belief, I couldn't give up. And on the 35th attempt, this is it. I created a math question that felt right. I confidently went to show it to him. Mr. Martin, I did it. He silently took the question I confidently handed him and began to solve it. As usual, he was swiftly solving. I watched intently as his pen danced across the paper. Then suddenly, Mr. Martin's dancing pen stopped. "Oh, Michael, this is incredible." "Incredible? What? What is it?" "Ha ha. I'm stumped. I can't solve this. It's insolvable for me. You did it. Excellent job." He was not frustrated that he couldn't solve it. He was delighted by it. I managed to create a problem that even Mr. Martin couldn't solve. Realizing what had happened, I jumped for joy with him. "Yes, mission cleared. This is fantastic. No matter from which angle you approach it, the solution doesn't reveal itself. It's difficult yet simple and beautiful. Is there really such a question? You've created something even better than I imagined. It's frustrating, but I'm even more pleased. Well done, Michael. It's all thanks to you, Mr. Martin. If you hadn't suggested it, I would never have thought to create a math question." Mr. Martin and I bumped in a victorious pose. At this moment, Mr. Martin and I truly transcended the teacher-student relationship, becoming comrades who loved mathematics. The time and experiences shared with him gave me even more confidence. That much was certain. During the summer break of my freshman year in high school, Mr. Martin called me. "Mr. Martin, what's up?" Sorry to bother you. I wanted to tell you as soon as possible." He began with a slightly sad look. Apparently, Mr. Smith, who had been on medical leave, was returning to school earlier than expected. As a result, Mr. Martin would not be returning to school for the second term. It's really sad to leave without saying goodbye to everyone. At least I wanted to tell you personally. Facing the reality that I had to say goodbye to Mr. Martin was something I didn't want to accept. But it was already a decided matter. There was nothing I could do. I had no choice but to accept it. And there were other trials for me as well. It was decided that my grandparents' store would close, the place that could be called my origin. My grandparents' store. "Mr. Martin, you elevated my math skills. Important things were suddenly gone. I felt a fierce sense of loneliness as if I had lost my place as well. But right after that, there was no time to feel lonely. First, both my grandparents began showing symptoms of dementia. With both of them affected, caring for them at home became difficult for our family. Reluctantly, we had to admit my grandparents into a nursing home. After settling my grandparents into the facility and finally catching a breath, my father collapsed. He had a pre-existing condition, and his health wasn't great, but it worsened due to the stress of caring for my grandparents. He was admitted to the hospital unconscious. 6 months later, my father passed away. Left behind were just my mother and me. We couldn't sustain our lives as they were. We sold the building and land we used as our home and store. With that money, we rented a cheap apartment and decided to live there, just the two of us. Given our current financial situation, going to university seemed difficult. I decided to get a job instead of pursuing higher education. "Mom, I'll work after I graduate." "What are you talking about? I've saved enough for your expenses for university. Don't worry and go to college," my mother said, handing me a bank book in my name. "You've always said you wanted to go to university. You worked hard studying for it, right?" "Thank you, Mom. At least I'll go to a local public university. I'll also do part-time jobs to contribute to our living expenses." From then on, I devoted myself to studying for entrance exams and working part-time jobs. I didn't want to put all the burden on my mother. I worked hard to keep my grades up so I could receive scholarships for university, ensuring that even if we couldn't afford luxuries, we could have a happy life supporting each other. Seeing my mother smiling in front of me, I seriously wondered if I should start working immediately. But I couldn't ignore her wish for me to go to university. In the end, I decided to attend the nearest local university from our home. Once I entered university, honestly, all I remember is studying and working part-time. I managed to complete all my credits in 3 years, dedicating the rest of my time to job hunting. This year, as a senior, everyone around me is also putting their full effort into job hunting. I too poured my energy into it without falling behind. I checked every company briefing and online session, actively participating. Honestly, I wasn't in a position to choose companies, but I had my non-negotiable conditions. I wanted to ease my mother's burden as much as possible, considering how much she had shouldered for me. I also planned to take on the responsibility for my grandparents' facility fees. I carefully checked not only the salary conditions but also the benefits and made my selections. I positively applied to the companies I had picked out. After applying to about 10 companies, I received an invitation for an interview from one. It was an hour by train from home. Remote work was an option if desired. It was a newly established company, but it offered internships. Thinking it was a pretty good offer, I decided to go for the interview anyway. "Well, Mom, I'm off to the interview." "Okay, take care. Bye now." I psyched myself up one last time while looking in the hallway mirror. Let's do this. I didn't intend to be nervous, but the unfamiliar dress suit and leather shoes seemed to heighten my anxiety. Looking back, I saw my mother sending me off with a gentle smile. My mother's smile eased my nerves a bit, and at the same time, boosted my morale. Upon arriving at the interview venue, I saw a line of job-seeking peers at the reception. I joined the queue, completed the registration, and was then guided to the waiting area. About 10 minutes later, my name was called, and I headed to the room where the interview would be conducted. Entering the interview room, I introduced myself with my university name. Although I thought I was accustomed to interviews from my part-time job experiences, I froze for a moment in the unfamiliar, tense atmosphere of the room. The interviewers were a man and a woman, young-looking, but being interviewers, they must hold positions of responsibility. Especially the man, who looked at me as if appraising me with a scrutinizing gaze. The female interviewer prompted me to sit with a please, to which I responded with a thank you, and bowed slightly before sitting down. As soon as I sat down, the male interviewer started talking. "Today, I'll be conducting the interview. I'm Miller." He introduced himself quickly. His fast-paced speaking caught my attention, but my nervousness was more overwhelming. The female interviewer also introduced herself, and all of us job seekers greeted in unison. "Pleased to meet you." After the greetings, I handed my resume to the interviewers. Mr. Miller was carefully examining each page of the resume. My nervousness increased even more. "What's this? Just a bunch of second- and third-rate stuff." "Nothing impressive," Mr. Miller commented after reading through the resumes. His unexpected remark shocked all the job seekers, leaving us speechless. The female interviewer beside him frowned and sighed in disapproval. The atmosphere in the interview room went completely silent. However, Mr. Miller continued unabated. "You know, I graduated from Harvard University. Get it? Unlike you guys, I'm from a top-tier university. I was hoping there would be someone else from such a background here, but no one," he scoffed. Apparently, Mr. Miller was the type to boast about academic backgrounds. Then he started asking questions. "So, Mr. Michael, here's a question for you." "Yes, please go ahead." "How many prime numbers are there between 1 and 100? I was surprised by the question. What does this have to do with a job interview? I had expected questions about self-introduction, self-promotion, or motivation for applying. "Huh? Can't answer. I guess that's to be expected from a second-tier university student," Mr. Miller sneered, assuming I was stumped by the silence. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19, 23, 29, 31, 37, 41, 43, 47, 53, 59, 61, 67, 71, 73, 79, 83, 89, 97. "There are 25 in total," I answered. "I guess you could answer that after all," Mr. Miller muttered, seemingly eager to maintain his superiority. He threw another question at me. "Next question, then. Deborah Reed was the wife of Benjamin Franklin, but do you know the name of her other husband?" Was he annoyed that I answered the previous math question? This time, he posed a history question. But for me, known as the Trivia King, it was an easy one. It's John Rogers. Mr. Miller clearly showed his frustration on his face, yet the questions didn't stop. He kept throwing questions at me, questions that one wouldn't know just from attending classes. But I kept answering them correctly one after another. Mr. Miller seemed unable to contain his frustration any longer, his face turning red. "This is just," he mumbled to himself while starting to write something on a notebook. Then, tearing a piece from it, he said, "Solve this." "There's no way you can, though." With an irritated tone and a flushed face, he handed me the torn piece of paper. He must have been quite annoyed. It took me a while to read the hastily scribbled question, but when I finally did, I was taken aback. "Ah, is this?" Maybe seeing my puzzled look, Mr. Miller smugly said, "What's the matter? Can't solve it? Well, that's expected. No way you can, coming from a second-tier university." Mr. Miller, pleased with himself for getting the upper hand, continued, "If you solve this, you're hired on the spot. I'll even prepare a $2 million signing bonus for you." He must have thought it was impossible for me to solve that at my university level. It was absolutely out of the question. He must have been certain of it. Indeed, it was a difficult question. Most people seeing it for the first time wouldn't be able to solve it. However, I knew this question. "Mr. Miller, please don't go back on your word about the immediate hiring. Oh, and you might want to start preparing the $2 million right now." Mr. Miller, thinking I was just bluffing, didn't take me seriously. But I finished answering in a minute and returned the paper to him. He was surprised at both my confidence and the speed of my response, and even more so upon seeing my answer. "What? How did you? Is my answer correct?" I asked. My words seemed to bring back his frustration. "You just guessed right. There's no way that's correct," he snapped. "Do you know the answer to this question?" I asked again. "Huh? What are you talking about? I don't know where you found this, but I created it when I was in high school. There's no way I wouldn't know the answer." "Where did you learn about this?" Mr. Miller stiffened. "Only my mentor and I should know about it," he muttered, biting his lip. He remained silent and looked down. Suddenly, the door to the room opened and a man walked in. The moment I saw him, I was filled with nostalgia and joy. "What? Mr. Martin? Is that you?" "Really, President? Why are you here?" It was Mr. Martin, my high school math mentor and fellow math enthusiast. I had researched the company's website before the interview, and the president's name was listed differently. But Mr. Miller just called Mr. Martin president. I was shocked and speechless. "Michael, it's been a while. It's been a long time. I had no idea Mr. Martin was the president." It turned out that after his stint as a temporary high school teacher, Mr. Martin joined the company through mid-career recruitment. With his brilliant mind, he made a significant impact at the company and was appointed president this spring. It had only been a short while since his inauguration, so the website still listed the previous president. That made sense. So that's why Mr. Miller knew about that math problem. By the way, Mr. Miller, I wanted to ask, was it necessary for our company's interview to include math and history trivia? "Ah, a number that is. I don't recall writing anything like that in the interview manual I created. Can you explain why you decided to ignore the manual?" "Oh, well, I thought it would be a good way to gauge if someone is truly talented." "I see. That's commendable, your enthusiasm as an interviewer." "Thank you. However, excellence isn't determined by academic background alone. Talented individuals exist regardless of their education, like Mr. Michael here." After a pause, President Martin continued, "Even if someone graduated from a prestigious university, judging abilities solely based on academic background doesn't make them excellent. You understand, Mr. Miller?" Mr. Miller was left speechless by President Martin's words. He was hanging his head in silence. "Sorry to interrupt the interview. Let me take a look at everyone's resumes." With that, the president reviewed all the job seekers' resumes. Everyone had impressive backgrounds. "All of you here have passed the first round. I can't promise a signing bonus, but I'd like you to take the second round as well." A few days later, I passed the first round and received a notification for the second round. Although I was a bit puzzled by the presence of people like Mr. Miller, thinking that President Martin was in charge gave me confidence that it would be a fulfilling place to work. I smoothly advanced through the second and third rounds, finally reaching the day of the final exam, a meeting with the president. The president was Mr. Martin. I was nervous, but our conversation ended up revolving around mathematics, just like old times. Was this all right? I wondered. But soon after, I received a notification of my successful application. I successfully joined the ID company presided over by President Martin. It wasn't because I was acquainted with President Martin that I was given preferential treatment or through any connections. I followed the proper procedures and secured the job offer through my own abilities. Mr. Miller, now a senior colleague in the same department, no longer boasted about his academic background. Working together, I realized Mr. Miller was actually very competent. As seniors and juniors, we could talk easily, and I asked him why he brought up academic backgrounds. Mr. Miller mentioned that many of the younger generation have a wealth of knowledge in computers and often surpass him in skill. It seems his actions stemmed from a defensive mindset, not wanting to be underestimated by new employees. Hearing this, I found Mr. Miller somewhat endearing. He's now the senior colleague I trust the most in the company. I aim to become someone who can stand shoulder to shoulder with President Martin someday. With a reliable senior like Mr. Miller, I look forward to improving and honing my skills together. Jake Harrison is my name. I'm simply a typical 30-something office worker who works hard at the daily grind of traveling from home to work. The impact of my supervisor, Mrs. Wilson, is one of the primary reasons for my weariness, even though aging and exhaustion seem unavoidable. Mrs. Wilson is capable, attractive, and model-like. She is also a top performer who received an early promotion as a result of her outstanding work. People frequently make jokes about how flawless she is, implying that when God made her, he must have accidentally packed all of her skill into one person. But she treats me harshly for some reason. Jake, there was another error in your paperwork, wasn't there? I'm sorry. An apology is not what I'm seeking. I'm curious as to why you erred. Pay close attention to what others have to say. Mrs. Wilson constantly chastises me for my frequent blunders. I'm worn out with the added pressure that such things put on me to avoid making mistakes. It's always so relaxing here, I remark as I sit on a park bench. Because of the homeless, there aren't many people in the park near my workplace. I frequently take breaks here because of this. It's my secret haven. Well, let's see how much I can get done today. I hurriedly eat my sandwich and then grab some yarn from my backpack. I've always loved crafts, even though some may consider it feminine. That's why I'm knitting in silence here to decompress. I also choose to knit here for another reason. Jake, are you back today? Hello, Joe. An elderly homeless man sits next to me while I'm knitting. Joe is this man. I find him to be a pleasant man and an excellent conversation partner. Joe doesn't call me feminine or make fun of me for knitting, but people try to avoid him since he's homeless. He always hears what I have to say. This is how Joe and I have been communicating for a few months now. Actually, my girlfriend broke up with me at that moment. I want to wed her. After 3 years together, she abruptly stopped talking to me and called me effeminate and repulsive. I was desperate since she had moved out and abandoned me. The way she treated me was extraordinary, despite the fact that we dated for 3 years. Ultimately, I was unable to give her the woolen cap I had knitted for her. To be honest, I considered discarding it. Joe started chatting to me at that point. Are you really going to throw that away? Yes, but are you interested in using it? Although I no longer need it, I had intended to gift it to my girlfriend. My expression must have been one of devastation at the moment. Joe gave me a sympathetic ear. This meeting turned into the beginning, and Joe and I started talking a lot in this park. The cap I gave him back then is still cherished by him. He is a genuinely good man. You seem even more passionate today. Yeah, you know what? I made a mistake again today. During the brief lunch break, talking to this old homeless man is my way of relaxing. Joe listens to my stories with interest, and I enjoy our time. But the fun time always ends quickly. Well, I'll be back. Don't make a mistake next time. As I packed up my knitting and handed Joe some snacks I bought for him, I left the place. A few weeks later, I was assigned to go on an outside job with Mrs. Wilson. Mrs. Wilson is very efficient at her work and very popular with our clients. Honestly, I wonder if I'm really needed, but it seems like the reason is the luggage is heavy, so help me. I can't help it because my sales skills are lacking, but I was knitting in the park today, hoping that she would rely on me a bit more. Hello, Jake. Joe, hello? Sorry, I might not be able to stay long today. I have an outside job after lunch. That must be tough. As usual, he said to me in a relaxed tone. When I talk to him, I feel tension leave my shoulders and I can relax. He may have once had a job where he had to talk to people. As I was thinking that, my phone rang. Suddenly, it was Mrs. Wilson. Jake, where are you right now? I'm at Cozy Park. That's perfect. Just decided to use my car for today's field job, so I'll pick you up after. Mrs. Wilson said that, and I checked my watch. Indeed, lunch break was almost over. The timing was perfect. I was called by my boss, so I'll leave soon. Is it the scary boss you were talking about? Ha! Don't say that in front of her. I saw Mrs. Wilson's car stop at the entrance of the park. I'm sorry, Mrs. Wilson, for picking me up. It's on the way, so it doesn't matter. I didn't know there was a park here. Mrs. Wilson stared at me in the park and froze. To be precise, she was looking at Joe, who was behind me. Dad? Mrs. Wilson ran up to Joe and hugged him. I've been looking for you. I was so worried. Jake, who is this beautiful person? Looking at the clueless Joe, Mrs. Wilson was frozen. I told Mrs. Wilson that he has amnesia. Knowing that Mrs. Wilson seemed to be shocked. No way. Dad, did you forget about me? Are you sure you're not mistaken? I can't believe I have such a beautiful daughter. You're not mistaken. Those gloves, they were made by Mom, saying that Mrs. Wilson was teary-eyed. Come to think of it, Joe always wore those ragged gloves, even though they were worn out with holes and missing fingers. It was something he had worn since he came here. He seemed to cherish them. Mrs. Wilson asked Joe several times, but Joe just tilted his head. It wasn't getting anywhere like this, so I decided to leave the park with Mrs. Wilson for now. It was time for work after all. During the field job, we were silent all the way. Mrs. Wilson, who never put personal feelings into her work, is strict but handled things professionally until the work was over. But as soon as the field job ended and we arrived at the parking lot, she burst into tears. Perhaps unable to hold it in any longer, all alone, she muttered, "Sly Dad, was it so traumatic that you forgot?" She looked so pitiful. Mrs. Wilson, if you're okay with it, I'll listen to you. I said this more as a consolation, but it seemed Mrs. Wilson had wanted someone to listen. She slowly began to talk about Joe. No, about her father, Mr. John Wilson. The Wilson family was a bit wealthier than the average family. Mr. John was a school teacher, and his wife was a nurse. However, when Mrs. Wilson was just starting her career, her mother passed away suddenly. She was involved in a traffic accident. It seemed Dad loved Mom so much that after she passed away, he quit his job and secluded himself all the time. At the time, Mrs. Wilson, who had already moved out of the house, would check on her father in between work. But as it got busier, she couldn't go home often and couldn't get through on the phone. When a worried Mrs. Wilson finally returned home after a long while, Mr. John was gone. I filed a missing persons report, but he couldn't be found. If I had been by his side, this wouldn't have happened. It seemed like Mrs. Wilson had been blaming herself for her father's disappearance until now, and she cried sorrowfully. Seeing that also hurt me, and I wanted to bring Joe home, but Joe didn't react very well to Mrs. Wilson. Even if I took him home in his current condition, he would likely return to the park. Including getting him examined at a hospital, the hurdles are quite high. Dad, if we return home, will he remember something? Even if he doesn't remember, at least I want to take him to the hospital, Mrs. Wilson said as a daughter worrying about her father. I thought, and then came up with a good idea. Hey, Mrs. Wilson, let's knit. Mr. John is a really kind person. The reason I first became friends with him is because he spoke to me when he saw me knitting. He also cherished his gloves, so if you give him a gift, he might be interested and listen to you. Joe always seemed to have an interest in knitting. Mrs. Wilson also said optimistically, "My mom used to knit a lot." He might vaguely remember that. However, she looked down a bit. "But I've never knitted before." "It's okay, I'll teach you." "Jake, thank you. I'm sorry you had to see me like this." Mrs. Wilson smiled weakly. She seemed a little worried, but it seemed like she wanted to do something for her father. Looking straight at me, she asked, "Could you teach me how to knit again?" "Yes, of course." And so, I found myself teaching Mrs. Wilson to knit. However, there were only a few places where Mrs. Wilson and I could practice together. We couldn't go to her house, so we decided to knit in the car. Could you take that thread like this?" "Yes, now put it through that loop." "Oh, it's not going in well. Should I push it further in?" "Well, no, don't pull the yarn like that." But things weren't going smoothly. I think we had this kind of conversation about 5 times. Mrs. Wilson is very capable at work, but it turns out she's actually incredibly clumsy. When the idea of knitting came up, it made sense that she might look down. I honestly thought it would be a long haul, but that's our relief boss. Mrs. Wilson apparently practiced at home, and before we knew it, she was getting the hang of it. She was using the most basic stitch, and it was pretty rough. But still, she kept at it for several months. Somehow, Mrs. Wilson finished knitting a scarf. Finally, don't let's go deliver it. But what if he doesn't accept it? He's not that kind of person. Come on. I wanted to show Joe the scarf that Mrs. Wilson worked so hard to make, so I took her hand and headed to the park. I used to come to the park quite often, but this was Mrs. Wilson's first time since that day. When Joe saw us, he said in his usual calm voice, "Oh, isn't it, Jake? You're not alone today. Go ahead, Mrs. Wilson." I know, with a bit of nervousness, Mrs. Wilson looked straight at Joe and offered him the scarf. "Dad, it honestly makes me so sad that you've forgotten me. But I was so relieved to know you're alive. I won't even ask you to come back home, but I don't want you to catch a cold. I made this in the same color as the scarf my mom used to wear often. It's not as good as hers, but I'd like you to accept it." While telling her heartfelt feelings as a daughter, Mrs. Wilson gives the scarf to him with a smile. Mrs. Wilson's mother was good at knitting, and this time, Mrs. Wilson had made a scarf with a design similar to the one her mother often wore while she was alive. It was filled with Mrs. Wilson's hope that it might jog his memory a bit. Joe accepted the scarf and said, "It's warm. I wonder why I feel so warm here, just looking at your smile." "Ha! I wonder why I'm in tears," Joe said as he wrapped the scarf around his neck, touching his chest and shedding a single tear. I wasn't expecting his memory to miraculously return just because of a scarf, but it seemed to have kind of triggered it. After that, he started going to the hospital with Mrs. Wilson, my boss. We're not sure if his memory will ever fully return, but it's said to promote Joe's health and social recovery. He didn't want to be hospitalized, but recently, Joe has stopped going to the park and has started a return to Wilson's family home. Perhaps because of these positive progressions, Joe has started to occasionally remember his own name, which made both Wilson and me happy. By the way, he still has the scarf I gave him, and he wears it alternately every day. Thank you, Jake. It's all thanks to you. And so I returned to my usual routine of knitting in the park. On that day, Wilson came and sat next to me. Wilson stands out in a good way at the office, so I appreciate being able to talk with her in the park. I'm grateful. But ever since that knitting, Wilson has been acting much more casually with me. I guess we've gotten close, but to me, Wilson is too attractive, and it makes my heart race. What am I doing at my age? I feel so pathetic. You're the one who put all the effort into knitting, Mrs. Wilson. I didn't really do much. Teaching me to knit wasn't a big deal to you. Well, aha. I gave her a smile as I stuffed my mouth with a sandwich. Through our interactions, I've come to understand that Wilson tends to be stern with those she has high expectations of. At work, she had high expectations of me too, which is why she apologized for being so strict. So, Jake, Would you like to have dinner with me sometime to thank you? Also, really? I was taken aback by her unexpected suggestion, but Wilson laughed and said, Of course, or you don't want to have dinner with me. I'll go, I replied. I would be honored. I jumped at the chance, which made Wilson laugh again. You're honest. Can we exchange our contact? Yes, I just realized I don't know your contact. Mrs. Wilson. Call me Sophia. Register me as that, Jake Harrison. I froze at hearing my full name, but Wilson just input my contact and then casually said, I'll contact you later, and left. Wilson, she knew my full name all along. It makes me happy, and I can't help but grin. I'll try my best to earn her trust enough for her to call me by my first name. While making such a determination, I start knitting a scarf woven in shades of blue and white. It's what I'm planning to make. I hope to finish it before dinner with Sophia. Then I will tell her how I feel. I love you. Will you be my girlfriend? I knew it. You took forever to say it. When I finally gathered the courage to confess my feelings over dinner, she happily said yes. So I wondered if I had been such an open book, but if she got the message, that's all that matters. So we officially became a couple, progressing steadily in our relationship. Eventually, we decided to get married. By the way, we haven't had our wedding ceremony yet. Actually, when I proposed to her after a year of dating, I asked Sophia when the marriage registration was supposed to be done. I was thinking we should do it on a special date, but Sophia seemed to have different plans. You realize I'm over 30, right? Yeah, I know. Don't keep a woman waiting forever. I want to get married right away, otherwise I'm afraid someone else might snatch you away from me. What a cute thing to say. So we submitted the marriage registration before the ceremony. Now, although Sophia and I are married, I'm still doing my knitting at the same park. I want to wear a stole you made at our wedding. When you hear something like that, it motivates you, doesn't it? Plus, Joe is planning to come to the wedding. He hasn't remembered everything yet, but he's slowly recalling bits and pieces of his past. I thought our wedding might serve as some kind of trigger, but he seemed unsure, asking, Am I even supposed to be there? With an anxious look on his face. So to ease Joe's worries, I'm planning to gift him something I've knitted too. According to him, the things we've knitted have been like good luck charms to him and have been really reassuring. What color should I go for? Imagining my future bride, I pick up my yarn again. Today, I first met her while I was hiking to observe alpine plants. Halfway along the descent route towards the cabin where I was planning to stay overnight, she was crouched at the side of the trail, looking unwell. She appeared to be in her late 30s, radiant yet somber, a young widow. Again this week, seriously. My name is James, but around here they call me Michael Thompson. I work as a researcher of alpine plants at the county museum. For 4 weeks in a row, when I told my wife, Michelle, that I was going alone to the mountains to observe alpine plants over the weekend, she reacted hysterically. It's part of my job, Michelle. There's nothing I can do about it. Back in college, I was part of the athletic club and was invited to go hiking by a senior member. The first mountain I climbed was about 6,500 feet high. I was captivated by a small wildflower known as the queen of alpine plants that I saw at the summit of that mountain. I was fascinated by the small wildflower that had white and pink petals blooming on the rocky ground. Since then, mountain climbing became my hobby, and this passion led me to my job as a researcher of alpine plants. What do you say to Jacob? Jacob is our 6-year-old son, Michelle said. I will take him to the amusement park this weekend, as I've been postponing our promise to him. Why don't you just take him, Michelle? You're the one who told Jacob about the amusement park without asking me. Leaving those words behind, I left the house with my backpack. I planned to stay overnight at the mountain cabin, and I had already submitted my climbing plan. I would get to the trailhead by transferring between trains and buses. Is this what they call going through a rough patch? On my way, I recalled the argument with Michelle. It left a sour taste in my mouth. I arrived at the trailhead just after 9:00 a.m. While climbing towards the summit, I observed alpine plants. It was just after 3:00 p.m. on my way to the mountain lodge where I'd reserved a one-night stay. I ran into a woman who was sick. I escorted her back to the lodge and nursed her back to health overnight. After regaining her strength, we parted ways at the trailhead the next day. On a whim, I stopped by a local shop at the foot of the mountain and bought souvenir candies for my wife and son for the first time. "What's this?" When I handed over the mountain treats, my wife, Michelle, looked at me in confusion. I called out to Jacob, who was in his room, telling him I'd brought back a souvenir. Having had his promise of a trip to the amusement park broken, Jacob sulked and deliberately stomped his feet as he came over. Hoisting Jacob onto my lap, I told him, "I swear I'll take you to the amusement park next weekend, for real this time. Really, really." Jake Jab asked, looking up at me. "I'm not lying." Then I opened the box of souvenir candies just as Jacob reached out his hand. Michelle interjected, "No, you can't. Dinner is almost ready." After dinner, Jacob and I spent a short hour playing video games. We took a bath together and I put him to bed. When I returned to the living room, Michelle was watching the news on TV, seeming bored. "How about a beer?" I asked. I took a can of beer out of the fridge and offered it to my wife. "What's gotten into you? Playing the doting dad all of a sudden and now trying to be the loving husband." I grabbed 2 glasses and sat down across from my wife, pouring the beer. I raised my glass for a toast. "There's something I want to tell you, something I need you to hear." Michelle took a sip of her beer and looked at me. I told her about the woman I met on the way to the mountain lodge, who was in poor health. I thought to myself, she's taking the mountain too lightly, dressed in casual clothes like that. But I couldn't just leave her there, so I talked to the woman. Whether she was on a tour or lost from her group, she only replied that she came alone. I didn't tell Michelle this, but I was reminded of the look on that woman's face when she looked up at me after answering my questions. With her glossy hair tied back and a certain melancholy in her eyes, I was captivated by her. And then I had a thought. Alpine plants possess a unique beauty. The higher the altitude they inhabit, the more I perceive their beauty intensifying. I've wondered why this is, especially considering the harsh natural conditions of these high-altitude areas. After all, plants such as flowers perpetuate life by enabling the pollen from male flowers to fertilize the female flowers. This process necessitates the assistance of wind and insects. Wind is something we can only leave to nature, but insects we can attract. Hence, flowers bloom. The fragrance and beauty of the bloom serve to attract insects, enlisting them in the process of pollination. I sensed something similar in her, the woman I encountered on the mountain road, something that draws men towards her unconditionally. She said, "Climbing in such light attire and getting sick. It's a nuisance, really, causing such a commotion." It's totally true. I considered taking her to the mountain cabin where I was supposed to stay. However, it was nearly an hour's walk from where I found her to the cabin, even just for me alone. "So, what did you do?" my wife asked with keen interest. "Well, I recalled that there was a refuge cabin much closer," I replied. "A refuge cabin is a mountain hut available for free to anyone encountering an emergency, such as bad weather. Most refuge cabins are run by volunteers with no resident caretakers, and because they're free, some climbers use them as planned accommodation, even when it's not an emergency, which is allowed." I continued my story to my wife. Carrying the woman I'd found on the mountain trail, I walked for about 20 minutes and arrived at the refuge cabin. Along the way, the sky had turned ominous. The wind was picking up, and large raindrops began to fall. The cabin was empty. "Well, looks like we're imposing ourselves here tonight." She nodded, arms wrapped around herself. Looking at her, I saw her lips trembling, tinged with purple. "Cold, isn't it?" "That's what happens when you climb a mountain like that." I offered her my mountain jacket that I was wearing. When you go mountain climbing, it's basic to layer your clothing. That way, if it's hot, you can take layers off. If it's cold, you can put them on. Even when I tried to explain the basics of mountain climbing, she was miles away. Then I contacted the mountain hut I had booked, explained the situation, and said we would be staying in the emergency shelter that night. "So what you're telling me is you two were alone together until morning?" my wife asked. Silently, I nodded in response to my wife's question. And then my wife, Michelle, spat out the words dismissively. I had brought food, drinks, and cooking utensils to the mountain hut we had booked because we planned to stay without meals. It was a bit scarce for 2 people, but I cooked dinner anyway. The menu was a classic instant curry. Still cold? I asked her, even though she didn't touch the curry I had made. As usual, she completely ignored me. Gradually, I began to feel irritated. Eat. If you eat, your body will warm up a bit. I don't want it, she said. I thought she was finally reacting, but this was all she said. Still, her gloomy tone made me feel something was seriously wrong. I don't know what happened, but I sternly said to her, if I hadn't come by, your life might have been in danger. You shouldn't underestimate the mountains. But she just turned her sorrowful profile away from me and remained silent, not trying to speak. I thought I couldn't handle this anymore, so I figured all I could do was let her sleep. Did she not touch it, after all? The curry you made? Yeah, she didn't eat it. I told my wife as I grabbed another can of beer from the fridge. As night fell, the rain and wind came stronger. The sound of rain hitting the windows was loud, and drafts blew in from various spots of the hut. While looking out the window, I asked, "How do you feel? Has it improved a little?" I thought she wouldn't respond, but then I heard her voice, as thin as a mosquito's. If I lie down like this by morning, I might. I turned to look at her. She was wrapped in the mountain jacket I had lent her, covering herself from head to toe. Once again, I turned my gaze back to the window, then I muttered, "It feels like I'm stranded in the middle of a storm." Suddenly, I heard the sound of the mountain jacket rustling. I looked at her. She was sitting half-light, staring straight ahead, frozen in place. "Oh, a storm," I said, really not at all on the side my wife shed in. "Guess so." "They're just the mountains," I answered, and my wife urged me to continue the story with a soft say. Afterwards, I got into my sleeping bag, but I was having a hard time falling asleep. Then she, who was asleep, screamed and jumped up, looking utterly lost. Thinking she might have had a nightmare, I crawled out of my sleeping bag and shook her shoulder. Her body was ice cold. This jacket alone isn't enough. "Hey, you're cold, right?" She gave a small nod and looked at the sleeping bag I had been using. "Can I get in there?" I laid the sleeping bag beside her. "Come on, get inside." She got into the sleeping bag as I told her, her body shaking from the cold. I thought there was nothing else I could do but warm her up. My sleeping bag was not the mummy type that people usually imagine, but the envelope type that's like a blanket folded in half lengthwise. If I left the zipper open, it would somehow accommodate 2. I got into the sleeping bag with her. I'm pretty big body-wise, so I hung half my body out of the sleeping bag and moved closer to her. She also snuggled up to me. "It's warm." My wife, Michelle, slammed her beer-filled glass onto the table with that force. The beer splashed out. "What, with a woman you barely know? You're telling me you spent the night with her?" "Yeah," my wife, Michelle, filled with jealousy, trembling with rage, glared at me. "Easy there," I said. "She's practically sick. Don't jump to conclusions." Even as I said this to my wife, I remembered the words of the woman that had made my heart skip a beat. "Warm, come closer." She began to speak softly as she nestled up to me in the sleeping bag. She had lost her husband in a mountain accident that had occurred on this mountain about half a year ago. She didn't know what to do next, and in despair and pessimism about her future, she decided to enter the mountain to follow her husband's footsteps and take her own life. But I couldn't do it. I don't have the courage to live on, but I also didn't have the courage to end it here. She told me as she buried her face in my shoulder. I told her, "Your late husband is probably saying it's too early for you to join him. That's what I believe." "Am I?" Michelle grabbed a tissue and started cleaning up the spilled beer on the table. I recalled the woman who had cried incessantly in my arms, the sensation of her body as she gradually regained her body heat. "But are you sure that's all there was to it?" Michelle asked, peering into my face. I said, "Don't overthink it." Seeing Michelle's settled reaction, she flashed a mischievous smile. She then headed to the fridge to get another beer and said, "You know what they say about men? When they have something to feel guilty about, they suddenly become nice." She said that my uncharacteristic actions, like buying souvenirs from the mountain, something I'd never done before, or becoming a suddenly understanding father, were evidence of my guilt. As she said this, Michelle poured beer into my glass. She then smiled sweetly at me. It seemed that Emily's mood had improved. You know, she said, I spent the night thinking about this with her. What would happen to you and our son if I had an accident on the mountain? Stop it. Don't even joke about such a thing. But it wasn't a joke or a lie. I had spent the night with her, seriously considering what would happen to my wife, Michelle, and our son Tyler, if something happened to me. What if I go first? Would my wife and son even shed a tear for a man like me? A husband like this? A father like this? I pondered. That's why I decided to change my ways. I wonder how long that'll last, was my wife's skeptical response. The next weekend, I finally fulfilled my promise to them to take him to the amusement park. I also cut down on my hiking trips. Then, several months later, one evening after dinner, as I was playing games with my son in the living room, my wife, having finished the dishes, suggested, "Hey, next time you go hiking, can Sean and I come with you?" Yeah, sure," I said beside me. Sean started making a fuss about how he wanted to go. Why didn't I think of that before? I was at a loss for words. All right, let's go for this trip. I chose a beginner's trail and took my wife and son hiking. At one point on the trail, my wife stumbled over a rock and lost her balance. I caught her and she buried her face in my chest, exclaiming, "This is quite tough." While I held her like that, Sean said, "You two are so." We quickly let go of each other. We're almost at a rest cabin. Let's take a break there. The cabin was manned with a toilet and a shop. There were a few other hikers resting there. As I walked towards an open seat with my wife and son, I stopped dead in my tracks when I noticed a woman among the other hikers. My wife asked, "What's wrong?" "It's her. The woman I told you about." "Wait, is she the one you shared a sleeping bag with?" I found myself nodding. Before I tapped my wife's forehead with my index finger, she chuckled and followed my gaze to the woman. She too noticed us. She quickly stood up and bowed her head towards me. Then she spoke to the man sitting next to her. After which, that man stood up, looked at me, and walked over. "I'm her brother-in-law, her husband. My younger brother died. I wanted to thank you for the help you gave my sister-in-law at that time." I was urged by him to step outside. Meanwhile, she approached my wife, and they sat down together. According to her brother-in-law, they had just marked the first anniversary of her husband's death. They took that opportunity to visit this mountain, the site of the accident, to pay their respects. Since my brother passed away, she had been withdrawn. My wife and I were concerned, but he never anticipated she would be so desperate as to think of following her late husband. If it weren't for your help, I might have lost her too. With that, he deeply bowed his head to me. After descending the mountain and getting on the return train, Sean, exhausted from the climb, fell fast asleep. "What did you talk about with her?" I asked my wife as I stroked Sean's head. "Just a normal chat between two women," she replied with a little smile. "So, what did you talk about?" I pressed, intrigued. My wife sang a little tune, teasing me. I wondered if she had questioned her about that night at the shelter. Of course, I had nothing to feel guilty about, but I was curious. "Hey, tell me, do you really want to know?" My wife grinned at me. Then she spoke. She said you blushed even at your age when she asked you to come closer. I remembered that moment, and with no words to return, I just averted my gaze. She apologized for making such a shameless request. She said I was as nervous as a high schooler. My wife laughed out loud at that. I ended up laughing along with her. Our laughter woke up Sean, our son. "Sorry for waking you, buddy. You can go back to sleep. You're not cold, are you?" I said to him. My thoughts drifted to her. "Just like an alpine flower, you are beautiful. Surely you'll have wonderful encounters ahead. I wish you all the best, just like us right now." I hope you enjoyed this. Your subscription to our channel really motivates us to create more content. See you in the next video.
With permission from the branch manager, I am ending your employment, effective now. I appreciate all of your hard work thus far. I had moved away from the busy front desk responsibilities to a less taxing back office position as I got closer to retirement. In the spirit of reform, our new, youthful, and vivacious branch manager began to get rid of whatever he thought was superfluous or in the way, not just items, but also responsibilities and people. When I remarked, "I don't understand why I'm being fired," the boss simply responded, "You're in the way." Just sitting back and relaxing with easy work that anyone could do, getting all self-important after finishing trivial tasks, with a look of complete distress. It's annoying to observe. The management presented this ridiculous logic with no remorse or regard. So it's just trivial work that anyone can do leisurely, huh? I pondered. I have no other option if it's a work order. I made the decision to follow the branch manager's instructions. After a week, the bank started calling me nonstop. Edward is my name. I work behind the scenes as a bank employee. I'm 51 years old right now. My employment now mostly consists of performing various secretarial jobs and occasionally helping loyal customers, as I have moved away from the hectic front desk position. It takes me back to my younger years to see the youthful employees rushing around the counter. Being in a back office role without prospects for further promotion, I'm just waiting for retirement. However, I quite like my current job. It seems a fittingly stable way of working for an employee nearing retirement. In fact, most employees around my age at our branch gradually start to downscale their work, with many retiring earlier than scheduled, some to enjoy their later years sooner, and others due to personal circumstances, like family care or health issues. I guess it's about time for life changes, such as taking care of parents or grandchildren. Just recently, the branch manager retired before reaching retirement age due to needing to care for his family back home. And today we have a new branch manager. "I'm Michael, your new branch manager. Looking forward to working with everyone," he said. At the morning meeting, the new branch manager, Michael, greeted the staff with great energy. He appeared to be about 10 years younger than me, dressed in a crisp suit and wearing an expensive-looking watch. His eyes were gleaming with ambition, his intense gaze and aura so dazzling that I honestly felt it would be tough to keep up with him. You there. Could you show me around the office, please?" "Sure, I'll show you around." "Thanks. Everyone else, please carry on with your work as usual." "Don't mind me." Michael then started his tour with a young female employee. Let's call her Emily. Like the others, I continued with my regular tasks. "Excuse me, but what task are you working on right now?" A loud voice suddenly spoke from above me. Whoa, that startled me, I thought, as my inner thoughts slipped out. Looking up, I saw Michael, arms crossed and looking rather displeased, with Emily, who seemed a bit troubled, watching me. "What's this?" Michael asked, looking at my work. I honestly replied, "I'm checking and entering application forms." Michael sighed heavily. "Honestly, I've never seen such a lax workplace before," he complained with a look of utter disdain. "Lax? What do you mean?" "Just what I said. At my previous branch, no employee took this much time on back office tasks. I'm surprised there are employees specialized in this. Checking and entering documents may not be a big job, but it's necessary work. Mistakes can't be tolerated in tasks involving large sums of money. Someone has to do it. I don't know how it was at that branch, but is it possible that no one did the back office work?" I thought about retorting that, but somehow felt it was too bothersome, and gave up. Instead, I just responded, "Is that so?" and gave him a smile. Emily looked on worriedly, and I felt sorry for her. I thought, if I let it slide, Michael would just leave, but he stayed put and seemed to ponder something. Then, as if he'd made up his mind, he nodded and announced to no one in particular, "Decided. From tomorrow we will reform this branch." The next day, True to his word, Michael started implementing changes at the branch. First off, he replaced almost all the office equipment with new ones. I wondered where the budget for that came from, but then I noticed an increase in the workload for the younger to mid-level staff, especially at the counter. Tasks that used to be sent to back-office jobs like mine were now less frequent, making the already busy staff even busier than before. If he pulls off this reform at the branch, sales will likely increase, benefiting all employees and propelling him to a higher position. I heard from the younger staff that Michael was talking ambitiously about this, but since his arrival, there has been a slight improvement in the performance of the junior staff, perhaps due to his strict guidance. As for me, watching Michael and the younger staff, I thought to myself, youth is incredible, as if it were someone else's concern. So I never imagined that this reform would turn against me one day. Michael called me into his office. I was a bit surprised since he hadn't spoken to me directly since his first day. "Do you need something?" "Yes, I'll keep it brief because I'm busy," he said while thrusting a piece of paper at me. "I'm terminating your employment, effective today with the authority of the branch manager. Thank you for your hard work." "Yes," I replied, tilting my head reflectively. Michael's voice was so loud that other nearby employees could hear the sudden termination notice, causing a stir. I thought I had misheard, but the document clearly stated it was a notice of dismissal. "You will be compensated fairly for your work so far, and we will handle the difficult procedures. So please pack your belongings and leave." Michael spoke quickly and then turned his back on me, hurrying back to his work. Completely baffled, I pressed him for an explanation. "Wait a minute, why am I being fired? Did I do something to harm the branch?" Despite my serious tone, Michael didn't look at me and simply said, "We'll properly handle the retirement encouragement." "That's not what I'm talking about. I'm asking if I have violated any work regulations or made a major mistake. This is wrongful dismissal." Michael sighed with annoyance and finally faced me. "You've violated the duty of diligent service. Bank officers and employees must be aware of their public mission and strive for fairness and efficiency in performing their duties as the regulations state. Why am I accused of violating that? Please be specific." "Ah, what a hassle. You don't try to keep up with new equipment or systems and still use outdated ones, causing delays. Don't you see?" Michael rattled off comfortably and quickly. "Have I ever caused a delay in work deadlines? I don't think I've caused any. It's a waste of time when young employees have to teach you how to use new equipment or when they have to wait for your confirmation, disrupting smooth operations." "That's quite a far-fetched accusation," I said, anger seeping through my words. Michael clicked his tongue and stepped closer to me, glaring intimidatingly. "You're in the way," Michael said dismissively. "While other employees are busy working, you're just sitting back and relaxing with easy work that anyone could do, getting all self-important after finishing trivial tasks. It's frustrating to watch." It seemed like Michael wasn't even trying to hide his malice anymore, speaking recklessly to someone older than him. "I'm neither relaxing nor arrogant. So, you're saying you want to fire me, not because I'm causing losses to the branch, but because you find me annoying." Confronted with Michael's irrational logic, I somehow became calm and stated, "Think whatever you want. Layoffs for staff restructuring aren't uncommon. When the time is right, we can hire capable young employees. Termination without a rational reason is an abuse of authority. Moreover, the back office work assigned to Edward by the previous manager is supposed to continue this term." Emily, who had been watching us argue, spoke up timidly. Following her, other employees started murmuring, "Yeah, it's an abuse of authority." Then, as of now, I declare back office work abolished. Michael shouted, not caring who heard. It was lucky that there were no customers around after hours. "I'm the current manager. The previous one might have tolerated it, but I won't have incompetence in my branch. If anyone objects, they're fired too. There's plenty of replacements." The other employees quickly looked away. Only Emily kept her eyes on Michael, albeit fearfully, realizing the situation might turn against her. I took a deep breath and calmly said, "Understood. If the position is being abolished, I have no choice but to accept the termination." My sudden acceptance of the order left everyone, including Michael, momentarily speechless. However, let me advise you, everything said and done here has been heard by the other staff. Everything. So please have no regrets. Regrets? What are you talking about? Michael responded. I'm glad you understand and accept it. It really helps me out, he added. That ended our conversation. I packed my things and finished the minimal handover that day. Leaving the bank where I had worked for over 20 years in such a manner was deeply disappointing. Yet at my departure, the colleagues I had worked with for years showed they would miss me, some even with tears. Despite their pleas to reconsider, I left content with their feelings. A week passed with no job. I no longer needed to wake up early, leading to erratic sleep patterns. Today, I woke up around 10:00 a.m. and found several calls on my phone, all from the bank I was supposedly fired from a week ago. What's this about? Before I could ponder further, the phone rang again. Picking up, I was greeted with a familiar shouting voice. What on earth is going on? Wow, what is that? You, Michael. What's this all of a sudden? What do you mean? What? What did you do? Tell me the truth. I have no idea what you're talking about. Start from the beginning, please. Michael then explained that days after my departure, several major clients threatened to close their accounts. The bank's internal operations were nearly collapsing, unable to function properly. Throughout the conversation, Michael sounded panicked. But frankly, I couldn't care less. That's why I warned you, I said with a look of disdain. In my first year working at the bank's counter, lacking confidence in my abilities, I spared no effort to improve my communication skills. Eventually, I could handle even the most difficult customers or complex explanations effortlessly. In my 50s, the customers I occasionally dealt with were those who had long relied on me. They trusted me more than anyone else for my clear and concise explanations, including some of Michael's mentioned major clients. Wealthy individuals are careful with their money and won't entrust their significant assets to a bank where they can't trust the people. That's what I always prioritized, trust with clients. In just 1 week, this person lost the trust I built over 20 years. At that point, my feelings transcended anger and sadness. I was simply astounded. I don't know what caused the major clients to leave all at once, but what do you mean the back office work is on the brink of collapse? I thought those trivial jobs anyone could do were supposed to be easy and comfortable, I said, speaking in a rare sarcastic tone. I knew that administrative work wasn't something that could be done casually alongside other tasks, and deliberately used the same words Michael had previously said to me. Having stepped back from customer-facing duties as I neared 50, I had taken on most of the processing work that other staff couldn't manage. It may sound inappropriate, but I was quite pleased that many clients were angry about the unfair treatment I received. They probably believed that someone like me could never have violated my professional duties. It felt like a validation of my diligent work. Come back immediately. You have to take responsibility for this mess. What are you talking about? You fired me a week ago. I'm no longer an employee there. Shouldn't you be getting back to work instead of wasting time on this pointless conversation? That termination notice was fake. You're still an employee here. Consider the last week as paid leave and come back to work immediately. His audacity knew no bounds, and he even admitted to falsifying documents. Michael's ranting, devoid of any shame, almost made me faint. You've been quite loud. Isn't it business hours? Are you not bothering the clients? I tried to stay calm in my response. After a pause, Michael's voice came through the phone, subdued. Please come to the bank. I'm begging you. Later, I visited the bank as requested and was led to the manager's office, where Michael and the senior bank officials were present. Seeing Michael after a week, he looked worn out, a shadow of his former self, likely chastised by the higher-ups. The executives apologized to me unanimously, asking me to return. I'm sorry for not meeting your expectations, but I can no longer work under a manager who commits unfair dismissal and document forgery. If the manager changes, would that resolve the issue? Before I could answer, Michael rushed over and apologized deeply. Edward, I apologize for my rude behavior. I didn't realize you managed many major clients. Please don't let me be fired. Michael's demeanor had changed, though he was still loud. Michael, please keep your voice down. It's carrying over to the center area, I said. Just then, a door opened with a knock. Emily and the president of Brown Real Estate, a major client I managed, stood there. Edward, Emily has always been under your good care. Thank you, and I apologize for the disturbance. President Brown greeted me politely when he saw me. He is my longest-serving client, and also the father of Emily, the bank employee. I've heard about this situation from Emily and understand it's been tough on you. It has made me think about reassessing where I keep my assets. Today, I came with Emily to take care of that. It seemed that President Brown was also considering closing his account with our bank. Losing a client who had been with me for so long was regrettable but inevitable. However, I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I heard something about changing the branch manager and Edward returning. If that's true, I would feel secure in trusting my assets to Edward again. It was unclear if President Brown's words were decisive, but ultimately, Michael was promptly dismissed. He was given a genuine termination notice, and his future was of no concern to me. I thought someone with his experience in banking wouldn't struggle to find another job. However, it didn't seem as straightforward as I thought. President Brown, holding accounts at various banks, had casually shared the details of this incident with employees at these banks. Consequently, Michael became blacklisted in the industry and was turned down for employment wherever he went. There's no duty of confidentiality to a single customer, Emily remarked nonchalantly, which I found somewhat intimidating. I heard through the grapevine that Michael was now making ends meet through part-time jobs. I sent out greeting cards to my clients, informing them of my return to the bank. Those who had once lost trust and closed their accounts were quick to reopen them upon hearing of my reinstatement. This experience taught me the importance of proper transition and passing on responsibilities, and I am now diligently training the younger employees. Fortunately, these young staff members are highly responsible and eager to learn. Being valued and needed even after turning 50 feels incredibly rewarding. With a newfound goal of nurturing the next generation of bankers, I am enjoying my days filled with excitement and a sense of purpose.